You're listening to Vedge Your Best. There has never been a more important time to be vegan. At Vedge Your Best, I want to help you. I want to help you limit and eliminate the consumption of animal products without feeling deprived, overwhelmed, or unsupported, even if no one you know is vegan. My name's Michelle Olander. I'm a life coach, and I know that if I could go vegan in my 50s, with all my excuses, I know you can start moving in that direction too. Vedge Your Best, and there's nothing you can't do. Episode 184, If You Give a Vegan a Cookie, with entrepreneur Rey Ortega. Hello, my Vedge Your Besties. Hi. You may hear in my voice today something that's gone a little viral, and it may or may not be preschool grandchild related. If you know children and if you know children's books, you may also have been exposed, get it, to that classic of unintended consequences if you give a mouse a cookie. Today's guest on Vedge Your Best says he probably eats more cookies than anyone you know. And in today's episode, you're going to hear how one thing led to another to bring a sick, overweight, suffering teenager to his current position of mentoring vegan businesses and business owners, one decision, one solution at a time. Rey Ortega, the Mad Cookie Man, along with his company, Sunflower Baking Company, brings his vegan journey to the pod and how thinking beyond the standard American diet not only changed his health and his lifestyle, it's informed the trajectory of his life and business, as well as his commitment to helping other vegans grow their own successful businesses. What I really love about this conversation today is that once again we see vegans do not just emerge fully formed from a counterculture commune or from some sort of rarefied, privileged background. Most of us have the same initial discomforts about changing the way we eat, and we worry about separation from our families, from our culture and our community. But what we do have in common is a moment when we think, really? Do I really have to eat animals? Today's pod, we're going to hear about Rey's childhood and health struggles, how he became vegetarian and then vegan, and how in the beginning, not knowing what to eat, he was subsisting on oats, ramen, and bread. And then we'll hear about starting his first vegan cookie company, Alternative Baking Company, and the challenges of marketing vegan products 20, 30 years ago. And lots more, including advice for starting a vegan business. So let's not waste another minute, and I'll see you on the other side of the interview. Rey Ortega, Sunflower Baking Company, and many other entrepreneurial events behind you. Welcome to Vedge Your Best.
Thank you for having me, Michelle.
It's a delight. It's really a delight. I was trying to decide what is the first way to introduce you, but I'm going to let you do that for us because you are what I tend to call a veteran vegan.
I've been hearing that.
Can you tell us when you moved in that direction?
Well, oddly enough, it was a strange transition from being a child. I didn't realize what I was actually doing. When I stopped eating eggs at the age of 16, that I would become who I am today. I had no idea because, the culture, as we talked about a minute ago, is something that you don't do. You don't stop eating meat. You don't stop eating eggs. You eat what's on your plate, and you'd be glad that you had it because, I grew up poor. I mean, we were pretty poor. And as a child, you didn't complain about your food. But then at the same time, I was a little monster. I ate everything that I could get my hands on. I had no complaints other than I was always sick as a child. I never knew why. My brother had some sickness, but it wasn't as severe as me, and I was bedridden for about 30 days. It's very, very sick. So I kind of I can't give the exact reason what happened or why it happened, but as a child, I grew up severely sick. I was sick all the time, and it's funny because I'm beginning to realize in my mind how bad it was as a child when you're trying to be in school, you're trying to learn. And one of the things, one of the problems that I had was a sort of like a dyslexic problem as a child, because I was sick. Because I think that being sick made my brain not work correctly. So at the young age of 14, I was about 14. I accidentally happened to stumble upon some books in a shed that I was crawling around in as a child. And they were medical books. They had that funny medical book smell. So I would open them up, and I just remember. I cannot tell you how vivid in my mind I have of that day of opening these books, looking at the black and white text, looking at the drawings, learning about disease, but never being able to really understand what the verbiage, because I was a kid, I didn't understand these big words and like, oh my gosh. But I kept those books with me, and I went everywhere with them for about 2 years. And my dad then one of my birthdays bought me some medical books that I could actually understand that were in color. And one of the first things that I went to was the digestive system, the endocrine system, disease. I had to understand, because even as a kid, I was kind of self-aware of like, what's wrong with me? Why am I always sick and nobody else seems to be sick, but why me? I didn't understand. So I discovered that I thought I had an egg allergy. So I stopped eating eggs when I was 16. And then I was actually eating at the time, maybe, unfortunately, 2 sausage McMuffins a day, Kentucky Fried Chicken at lunch. I had no fear for food because of the way I grew up. I was like, it's just one of those things. I think when you grow up poor, you have a tendency of not really thinking about what you're doing and never realizing food could do so much damage to your body. So when I stopped eating eggs, I had to stop eating anything with hidden eggs in it. And then I realized, oh my gosh, eggs is in everything. Eggs is in pasta, they're in muffins, they're cakes. Everything that I loved had eggs in it. But I was having headaches all the time. I wasn't feeling well. I just kind of stuck to the no eggs rule for a while. And then I started gaining weight really bad. And then I was getting sicker. I thought it was normal to be as sick as I was. And I had everything under the sun. So fast forward to about the age of 20, 21, 22, I was like, I had enough. I was 295 pounds at the time. I've got to find out what's happening. And naturally, we all go to doctors. So everybody goes to a doctor thinking that the doctor knows all. What she was telling me and what I was reading was very different. Well, basically, I had stretch marks on my body. They were purple. I had purple marks on my body and on my belly. And so they examined me, and she says, well, I think you have Addison's or Cushing's disease, or you probably have a tumor on your adrenal glands. And I'm like, wow, really? I mean, the Cushing's and Addison's, I thought I could live with, but the tumor on my adrenal gland, I was really shocked about. I was like, you disbelieve. You don't believe that this is happening to you. So then I said, how do you get rid of the tumor? And she says, you got to cut your back open, take out a rib, and remove the tumor. And believe me, that was inspiration enough for me. That's the last time I saw the doctor, by the way. That was inspiration enough to me to go back and hit the books even harder. So I started having to read about the endocrine system, because that's what my problem. I was sluggish, tired. I was constantly always wanting to sleep. Well, I became vegetarian, which was a shameful, in my culture, you are shunned, shamed. I was embarrassed of the word vegetarian. So when I became vegan, I was solely embarrassed about the whole thing. And I had to grasp what I was losing, which was all the flavors and the tastes and the cheeses and everything. I knew in my mind that I was going to give this up. But at the same time, I thought, you know what? It's not worth it. It's the eating this crap that was making me sick was not worth it, especially after the science of foods. I'm a huge food science fan now because of all that I've learned. It's just like every time that I want to talk about it, I always end up talking about food science, because the food science is really what made me vegan. And then it wasn't until a couple of years later that I became understanding about the slaughterhouses and the animal abuse and all that other stuff that correlated with the whole thing. It's quite interesting, if that answers your questions.
Yeah, well, you are one of the classic I could never be vegans, right?
Big time.
I think a lot of us who grew up in families where we felt very lucky to have plenty of food, where maybe there were first degree relatives who had not had enough food, or had been through wars or had been through poverty. Many of us would feel quite ashamed about the concept of turning away food that was presented to us.
You know what? The interesting thing about this, now that you just tipped that off in my brain, I can tell you right now that had I turned my food down, my dad would have been furious. My mom, they would have just lost their minds, because I grew up with 16 brothers and sisters, and my mom grew up with 9 brothers and sisters, and they lived on a shoestring. My grandma, my dad's mom, was killing animals in the backyard to survive, to eat the food. And this is all they had. This is like your 16 brothers and sisters. Oh my gosh, you got to feed all these kids. When they grew up with that mentality, it's sort of passed on to you. And this is how they think. So had I ever dared say, I'm not eating this, that was how I grew up. I grew up with I will get my ass kicked if I dare become even vegetarian. You know what I mean?
And even if that was not literally true, even if your parents didn't actually follow through on that, that's how you believe. That's how you felt. That was the culture of your home. And I think many of us can relate to that idea that the world has changed a little bit, that people can turn their nose up at food.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting enough. It's still a little weird to turn food down. You know, I'm at a party, people are like handing me stuff. I'm like, I had to say, vegan. I'm very proud of it now for the most part, but I think sometimes I just don't like to bring it up, because it becomes a topic, and then everyone wants to talk to you about it. I mean, it's okay to some degree at the proper time, but I just sometimes just want to live like everyone. I want to be the regular guy, but in public, it's just never the case. Now, everywhere I go, I'm the vegan guy. Everyone who knows me knows. I'm not judging anyone, but it puts people, it gets them thinking when you enter the room and they know who you are. They're like, what's on the table?
I can relate a little bit to that. Yes, I can relate also. Well, that's, I think, why vegans flock together.
Yeah. Oh, no. Oh, my gosh. I was so lonely. I was so by myself for the most part, not even knowing where to go to shop. So I started out eating oats, top ramen, and bread was my thing.
When you first started?
Yeah, and I lost 60 pounds immediately I was so programmed to eat for survival, basically, not for health. I was eating for survival.
So clearly what got your attention was how badly you felt as you were eating. So not only the weight went down in your 20s when you started really being a vigilant vegan in terms of how you ate, you also started to feel better then?
Oh, geez. Not only did I start for the clarity, everything became more clear. Politics became more clear. I'm not a judgmental person, but I think as vegans, we all judge to some degree, but then I started looking at everything else. I started looking at my mom and my dad, and my family. And then I was like, oh my gosh, these people. That's when I started getting mad. I started getting angry because I was so fooled for so long thinking that it was me that was the problem. And I thought, it's not me. It's society. It's society who was putting me in a place. I remember I was so mad. I remember when I think the first week I became vegan, I gathered all my leather stuff and put it up for sale in the yard. I literally took everything out that was leather that had anything to do with an animal product, and I stuck it outside, and I was for sale because I was so pissed that I didn't want anything to do with the animal products.
So this is why they call you the mad cookie guy.
I'm the mad cookie guy. I wanted to choose the pissed cookie guy, but that didn't sound nice.
The mad cookie guy. So let's talk cookies then. Ray, where did the cookies come in?
Well, since I had, like I said, I stopped eating eggs at 16 and all the hidden eggs. When I became vegan, oh no, actually before I became vegan, I was vegetarian. I got a job at the Sacramento Natural Foods Co-op here locally in Sacramento. So this is 1993, keep in mind. So they're like, what are you going to, where are you going to go? Where are you going to get your food? I was like, I think I'm getting sick of top ramen, oats, and bread every day. So I had to kind of like, there's got to be something else. And I happened to stumble upon a cookie in the cookie aisle or a bakery aisle. And it was a vegan, it said, it didn't say vegan on it. It said no eggs cookie. And I was like, oh, no dairy, no eggs. What the hell? I mean, I didn't even know that it could exist. I had no idea. I was so narrow-minded in thinking. But the Sacramento Natural Foods Co-op had been around since the 70s, and it was a staple of the neighborhood, And so I had friends who worked there, and what I call normal friends, so to speak, but they weren't all normal. Everyone is a little bit different at the co-op. I think they're all that's what I loved about the co-op. The diversity of the employees at the co-ops was really a huge change for me. It's more or less how I learned more about people because of the co-op. And one of the things I had to get taught how to bake vegan. So when I learned how to bake vegan cookies through the person who worked there, who helped me understand what the blends were, what they did, how it worked, the vegan bacon. I was like, oh, this is so cool. But the only problem was it had a short shelf life. Shelf life was like only a week or 3 days. It was completely horrible. I never thought I was going to be a cookie guy. I actually, I don't know what happened. I got some kind of weird inspiration, realizing that I had been doing alternative baking. I was like, I'll baking alternatively. I was like, oh, that would be a great name for a company. I remember thinking that. And the girl that was with me who helped train me, she was like, yeah, alternative baking company. That's a great name. I was like, oh, okay. So I started my first company basically while I was working at the co-op on less than $5,000. I started to see what the resources were to get all these cool ingredients, egg replacers, sugar replacement, and never realizing where I was going. I just did it. I didn't think a failure or a success. I didn't care. But the purpose of it was that I wanted a cookie, and it had been 7 years. So my type of personality is I'm a little extreme. I can be extreme sometimes. And so I took it to the extreme. I said, you know what? I think everybody's got to have this cookie. So I decided, hey, I think I'm going to do this. I'm going to open up an alternative baking company. So my first company in 1994. And so I did it all by myself. I was working at nighttime. I was baking them. I formulated, had to slowly reformulate to learn the processes of food, the chemistry of food and how it worked to extend the shelf life. So then I had to find a bakery. I had to quit the job because I was starting to get bigger faster than I thought it was. It was like 300 cookies a week, 1,200 cookies a week, 500. It was like, it just grew like crazy. We were doing about almost $1 million in sales within 3 years, I think it was. So that's how I started my first company, alternative baking company. 3 years later, not getting along with these people, different ethics, I started sunflower baking company with all the same passion and the same mindset. And that's where I'm at today.
Sunflower as in FLOUR, right? Like
yes, sunflower baking.
Sunflower baking.
I thought it was being cute.
So sunflower baking company, what do you produce? Now you produce cookies still, right?
Yeah, still do cookies. I do. The cookies have evolved enormously. I mean, the gluten-free thing fad started coming out. I kind of saw the writing on the wall that I had to come up with something different. So I started with pinto bean flour and rice flour, but I still kept wheat. And I tell everybody this, that there's nobody that Michelle, that has eaten more cookies than I have. And I calculated to eat about almost 800 cookies a year. And I started thinking, this is kind of hard on my system after a while, even though it was probably the amounts of sugar that I was eating, it was the flour that wasn't helping. So I decided, I think gluten-free would be good for me. So I really initially do all these things for myself because I just said, I needed, better cooking. I need to feel better. Because you know why? If I don't feel good about what I'm eating, nobody else is going to feel good about it. So the evolution of this cookie is now oat flour. I took out the pinto bean flour some years ago, but at the time there was no gluten-free oats, because the gluten-free oats were not available because they were grown in the same field. Now they are not. There's plenty of gluten-free oats now, but at the time I always wanted to use oats because I love oats in my food. I love, so not so much now because of carbohydrates. Now I've learned so much about it for myself as I get older. Food, I'm a little bit more food sensitive, and so I switched it to oat flour because of the protein and the fiber content and its stability. And it is really stable. It had a great texture to it, so it's really not necessarily the ingredients that are what I'm making anymore, more than it is the process of how I make it. So because naturally you see the ingredients on the back of the package. Anyone thinks they can replicate it, it's being almost pretty much somewhat impossible. But there is a lot of little companies out there that make vegan cookies, and I'm so proud of them. I don't really feel competitive. There's no competition for me, so to speak. That's why I started the website at startaveganbusiness.com, because I want other people to try to do better. I want other people. I'm not going to live forever.
So I'd like to hear about that, because you've made a lot of, you've had a lot of experience in business since you first started. It's a lot of permutations. You've had partnership problems, I'm sure, and you've had marketing issues that you've had to conquer, production questions, sourcing your materials like the bean flour or the oats. So you obviously feel that you have a lot to offer somebody in terms of a sounding board, or as a coach for somebody who's looking. I'd like to ask first, what are the issues around calling your business vegan, do you think, in your opinion?
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I'll start from the beginning on that one. I remember when I first started and I had vegan on my packaging, people were like, you got to take that off. You can't have that word on there. And I was kind of like, and I actually questioned myself, because I thought, well, yeah, I think, well, no, I'm doing this. I was like, fail or succeed, I'm doing it. I don't care. I didn't care. I was like, forget about it. So yes, and the couple obstacles were, people were afraid of it was going to taste not good. The whole cardboard 1970s mentality. So people are always like, it can't taste that good. So that's when I ended up realizing I had to give away a ton of cookies. I had to give away cookies galore. So that was a huge marketing problem in the mainstream, so to speak. Locally, San Francisco and the Sacramento area and some parts of the United States, I've started doing mail order, and it was accepted. But for the most part, the marketing of it, thank goodness, it's really changed these days. I think it's so much more accepted than it's ever been. And so I just kind of ran with I think my passion just drove me to not care. Like, don't care what anybody says. Don't care what these people think. Just do it. I should have invented that, not Nike. Just do the vegan thing.
So I love that you doubled down on the vegan side, but you also understood that people needed to know it tasted delicious.
100%.
So your solution to that was make sure people take a bite, make sure people taste it.
I just knew that it was going to have to happen that way. I knew giving cookies away was the only way to get people to change. I had to inspire them.
What else comes up when you put vegan on the package?
It's completely evolved. It's over now for the most part. It's, even though at the same time we are just begun with this whole plant, now it's turned into plant-based, which I wish I had thought of the word plant-based. But now that it's evolved into the word plant-based, even though corporations still aren't really quite getting what plant-based means, because I still see stuff that's labeled that has plant-based on it, that has whey, and it may even have eggs sometimes. I'm like, this is not plant-based. Hello. This is a huge corporation. For some reason, somebody had the wild idea to put plant-based on it. But, it's still just an education for a lot of people, even corporations. That's why I'm out doing these podcasts. That's why just, last year, I keep thinking to myself, what else can I do? I need to do something else, especially after seeing this plant-based stuff in the stores. It's like, I don't feel like I'm done. I think I still have more to do. In fact, I'm trying, I had a pitch deck and a business plan made because I was so pissed, still mad. And that I wanted to raise money to build the largest vegan plant-based facility, a legitimate plant-based facility in the country. And so I'm working on that now. I'm sending out my pitch and business plan to everybody because I've got the talent, I've got the skills, I got everything, all the information, all the resources. I just need to really scale up is what I'm trying to do with my cookies.
And so right now, where can we get your cookies? How do we find them?
You can get them on Amazon and my website. It's sunflowerbaking.com, FLOUR, like the baking flour.
What's the kind of thought process you would put people through if they're kicking around an idea that, well, your experiences with manufacturing, basically manufacturing food and larger scale. Yeah. What stands in the way of a normal person who has a great idea and something like you do?
I think probably unfortunately these days it's the financial aspect because I think that people get turned off. As great as an idea as you may have, you better go in with the understanding that you may fail, but don't ever take failure for an option, so to speak, because if you have enough passion, you'll overlook that and find a way. You will find a way. If you are passionate enough about a product, you will find that way. But it's going to take some work. It's going to take some smarts. It's going to take some resources. You have to really, interestingly enough, maybe in some ways I'm a pioneer of some sorts in some ways, but I think that the process of what I do is not new. I did not invent making these, the cookie, I did not invent the business. I did not invent. So all I did was I just replicated what I thought all the others were doing and used the same equipment and used some of the same ideas and the plans that they use. And really, if you take those models, because every model that you see out there can easily be turned into vegan. I can't even, now they're doing pineapple skins, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh my gosh, pineapple skin. I'm like, wow, people are really innovative thinking of all these crazy ideas. But guess what? You just have to, if you have something as unique as that, you still have to find a process, but it's out there. You could have to invent the process, but you know what? That's okay too. And although it's more of an expense, it is what it is,
So by talking to you, somebody with who's new to this idea would probably get a good first exposure to the kinds of problems and questions and expenses that are likely to come up along the way, right? So this would help somebody refine their thought process and their business plan.
I always tell people, if you give me an hour, I'll tell you whether I have enough information to tell you whether or not you're going to move forward or you're going to quit. I do. I completely can tell you in at least 1 hour where you're going to go, and it's really a matter of finances for the most part. And because if you're not, the passion is one thing, but if you don't have the finances, then you're going to get yourself into trouble. And that's I don't want anybody to fail, especially a vegan. I cannot stand it when vegans Just Foods is having problems. My favorite egg product, they're having problems because they've over-raised money. You can't, you may think Miyoko's, she's another good example. Too much, too soon, a lot of returns, there's a lot of problems that also come with it. They're all standard problems. It's not all this business stuff is not a new idea. You just have to follow the same path. Watch, you might be vegan and you might have an attitude like, hey, I can't fail, but you can fail. But you have to just watch yourself and be careful what you pick and choose your battles. And that's one thing I've lived by is I've had to pick and choose my battles.
So that is something you offer on top of making cookies, is you offer your expertise and your experience to people who want to pick your brain for 30 or 60 minutes, right? By going to howtostartaveganbusiness.com.
Absolutely.
And Mad Rey Ortega, the Mad Cookie.
I won't be mad at you. I won't be mad at you for
That's
trying.
great. And such a good idea. This is something I think we all need somebody who's maybe even if they don't know exactly what our idea is, they can talk us through it so that we can interrogate our own ideas. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity for some people. You would like to see people making more vegan cosmetics, vegan shoes. What's some other areas you're looking to see people? Because obviously you can't do it all yourself.
I wish I could do it all, but there's I think what's interesting is I think actually there's a weird problem that's happening now, and that is an oversaturation of protein. People, alternative proteins. I think as vegans, we've got our wish. Okay, let's just say we got something that similarly tastes like meat. We got the same textures. We got eggs. We have more than we've ever had in our lives. We got it in Carl's Jr. We got it into Burger King. But you know what? When I go to the store, and Safeway in particular, which I go to a lot, you will see the alternative products, the meats, in the same section. But I often wonder, and I actually have seen reports that it's just an oversaturation. Beyond Meat is having problems. Impossible Meat is having problems. And the reason why they're having problems is because nobody's buying it. There's the markets are only so big. They're huge. Don't get me wrong. I mean, at Kroger's, for example, I'm in about 180 Kroger's. They have 2,700 stores, but guess what? You can put in a case of each of food, of vegan something in all these 2,700 stores. But guess what? It doesn't mean anybody's going to buy it. And that's part of the problem. There's, I just a couple of days ago, I looked up. When I was vegan, I started vegan. It was only 4% of the population. It's only now 6% of the population in the United States, which was mind-boggling because I thought, 30 years, we only grew a couple of points. I mean, okay, all right. It's still a lot of people. Don't get me wrong. I think I calculated it to be about the half of the California. I thought, that's still a lot of people, but they're scattered without the United States. But you have to get those people to go into the store and accept it. And that's the same thing with all these burger places. Because I don't go into the burger places all the time. And it's really more for the curious people. Like, I think I'm gonna try this burger today. I'm like, doctor said I had high cholesterol, so I call them the Diet Coke people. This is how Diet Coke works. People are saying, I want to kick sugar, so I'm going to try something different. And they have to accept that taste, which is completely gross, if you ask me. Diet Coke and Pepsis are disgusting. Would never drink them, for various reasons. But I don't mind supporting Burger King and any of the places that Carl's Jr. I used to love those places as a meat eater, but this is proof that you can oversaturate the market, and hoping that it's supposed to be a good thing, but it ends up being well, we're at this point now. We have too much of it. Now we're going to fail. We don't want these guys to fail.
So what are your thoughts about what we should be doing? So diversifying, getting not just into proteins.
Better management. I think that part of what drives us and myself too is our egos. Egos to think that you have made something so fantastical that everybody's going to buy it. Well, meat eaters are one of the hardest people, especially cheese eaters, are hardest people to convince to change because they don't want. It's a personal choice. I mean, you to change people's personal choice is very difficult to do. That's why I keep my mouth shut and I just hand them a cookie and I say, shove this in your mouth and see what you think after this. And then I think, here, if you think this is good, try other things. You know what I mean? Try something else. This is how good it is these days.
Yeah. So you're channeling that thought process of being a new vegan or somebody who's leaning into a vegan idea. Yeah.
You have to. So that's part of the marketing process. And this is what surprises me about these corporations. I'm like, they're not thinking with that mentality.
So tell me what flavors cookies you have before we end. Leave everybody hungry and salivating for your cookies. What have we got?
My favorite one is chocolate chip, of course.
Classic.
We got snickerdoodle. We got, of course, peanut butter, which isn't my bestseller these days because of allergies. I just came out with s'mores. S'mores, I love s'mores to death, maybe too much. Brownie cookie is what I came out. Oh, the brownie is so delectable. It's got this the one important factor with anything that I make now that especially I've got some help who helps me formulate, is the texture of these things, the texture along with the flavor. And that's one of the things that I'm most proud of is the way that my texture and tastes are.
Rey Ortega, the Mad Cookie Man, Sunflower Baking. That's Flour. Anything else you want to tell us to do, to find, to look up before I let you go on with your day?
You got to change your diet and you'll be happy. You'll be so much happier. So much happier.
Great words to end on. Thank you, Rey Ortega. Thanks for being on Vedge Your Best.
Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate it.
So, what did you think of Rey Ortega? Now that's Rey, R-E-Y, like El Rey, King in Spanish, not R-A-Y. And you can follow Rey over on the Instagram at Sunflower Baking Cookies. And again, sunflower is also spelled differently, like the ingredient in baking, F-L-O-U-R. And for those of you thinking about starting a vegan business, you'll want to look over at Rey's website, which is startaveganbusiness.com. And that's all just part of his commitment to sharing wisdom earned over the years by making all the mistakes in a vegan business, so maybe you don't have to. Listen, I recently told an interviewer that so far I have still not spoken with anyone who was born and raised vegan. Opting out of the consumption of animal products, this is simply a choice that we start by practicing meal by meal, purchase by purchase, and it doesn't get easier by thinking about it. But it does get much easier when you start actually making the choices. And even if you just choose vegan when it's easy or delicious, for example, like one of Rey's cookies, it's a much better start than waiting until you have all the facts, figures, recipes, and options on hand. Even if you are only ready to start, maybe start patronizing and supporting vegan and plant-based companies sometimes and looking for vegan entrepreneurs and, checking out some vegan life coaches and podcasts. Even if that's all you're ready for, that is going to be part of your 10,000 hours, which I don't know why I use that. If you know me, I don't really believe in the 10,000 hours rule, but it's a good analogy. It's a good example that we all understand. Change takes imperfect action before it becomes really fluent or comfortable. Okay, all that to say, all of Rey Ortega's links are in the show notes, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts about today's interview. In the meantime, please, wherever you are on your vegan or plant-based journey, or if you're vegan, on any goal you have, don't wait until you have all the ducks in a row. Please start with what you do have and be courageous enough to start where it's easy, not with the really hard or overwhelming part. Really, it's okay to start where it's easy, even if that's a vegan cookie. Honestly, it's magic. It will jumpstart you if you're in that analysis paralysis that most of us find ourselves in periodically. So, get out there, my Vedge Your Bestie, and veg your best. Vedge Your Best podcast production, music, and editing by Charlie Weinshank. Thanks, Charlie. Before you go, it would mean so much to me and the Vedge Your Best team if you would hit subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, or share with someone you think might be interested. Something about algorithms, it helps bump us up a little in the rankings, and that's the best way to help others find the podcast and for us to find our audience. So, until next week, make it easy and veg your best.